Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of Random Dude Does a Random Podcast. I have my guest Rory McDermott, who is very active in groups as far as I know. Rory, if you want to explain some of the things that you're a part of and why you agreed to be on the show and what's going on with you, I think the audience would love it. So.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I'm involved in a couple different organizations on campus. I first of all am one of my favorite groups that I'm in is called Kairos, and that's through the Lutheran Church of Hope in Ames. It's a Christian group. We meet once a week for regular a service kind of thing for college students, and we also do other. We have other side activities too, one of our big things is called Kairos groups, and it's kind of like a small group environment that you would think of when you think of a youth group or something like that. It's like a smaller group of 5 to 10 people that meets once a week. We normally talk about the previous service or just whatever's on our mind that week, and just hang out and get to know each other and stuff. So that's the first thing, and I'm a part of the leadership team for that, so that kind of I get to help volunteer at services and stuff through that and help organize events and stuff. It's a lot of fun, and it's just I really love just the environment that they bring and how inclusive they are to everyone and stuff. So that's the first thing. I work at the writing center on campus. That's kind of my part-time job during the school year, and I am a communication consultant, which is basically my role is to do it's kind of like a tutoring session, except it's specific to writing. So if a student's working on an essay or any sort of sometimes resumes and cover letters, personal statements, anything communication related. So it doesn't just have to be an essay. It could be a presentation or something like that. And I'm kind of there to listen to whatever they're getting stuck on or want help with in their writing, and help support them in that, and give any advice if there's any to give, and just also provide encouragement that they're normally doing a pretty good job too when they come to me. And yeah, so it's a 30-minute appointment, and that's really cool, especially when you get to learn more about the person, and you kind of get to meet new students through it that are normally pretty if they're seeking help, they're really enjoy being there and improving in their academics. So that's a lot of fun. And then I'd say the other big organization that I'm in is the running club. That group, it's a club organization, so it's unaffiliated with the cross country team or track team here at Iowa State. But basically, it's just an organization. We meet for regular runs every day, and that's one component of it. It's just a place that you can come and go for a run with a group of people, and kind of socialize through that, and also find running partners and stuff. But also, we also compete in meets around kind of the Midwest. So we have a cross country season where we kind of just wrapped up with that here now in November. Where we every couple of weekends, we go to a meet somewhere in the region. We run a race with either other run clubs at other big universities, or we also compete against sometimes Division III schools. One of the meets we like to go to is at Wartburg, and there's Wartburg goes there, and then other Division III schools. I know in the past, even some community colleges go and stuff. So that's really fun too for people who like running and competing in running, but didn't go to college to run. It's kind of a fun way to stay in that, but not be super time consuming, or it's completely based on what you want to do and how much you want to do with it. So yeah, those are kind of the big organizations I'm involved with, and I really enjoy them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that sounds busy, and it sounds it's really every single one of those is very spiritual, kind of with yourself. You know what I mean? Helping yourself get better, especially with the Kairos and the running, but even with the media and writing center, that could probably help your own writing and your own media. And just in a lot of ways. Do you have like return customers for that? How many
Ooh.
people take advantage of that?
Ye-
I don't hear much about. I know it exists, but I just don't hear much about it.
Yeah, that's a great question. We really normally when someone comes for an appointment for whatever reason, like most people have a good experience with it. Like I get quite a few people who once they come once, they'll come back again either to work on like the same assignment that they're working on or like just in the future when they come across another essay or whatever. Um, yeah, there's so every once in a while you get a repeat person come back in, and those are especially cool because then you've kind of built up a relationship with that person, and um, yeah, it's really rewarding, and it's also a great way to improve your writing. Like you were saying, I definitely it's helped me a lot. Like getting the training first of all, in like writing knowledge, but also like just interacting with people and like I like learning how to handle like one-on-one situations for potential. Like I'm a psychology major, so I always knew that was like a potential career in the future where you'd be like meeting with a person one-on-one or like learning how to like listen to people and like help them with what they need. So that was one of the reasons why I got into it, and I definitely like have learned a lot about what that's like and like what my style is like for that too. So yeah.
What was the training like? Like, what kind of advice do you give somebody? What have you found yourself not just correcting, but what are the most common things that you say to people when you're giving them advice? And like, if you were to broad range help people right now with their writing, I mean, what would you guess that they need help with?
Yeah. Well, I'd say the big thing is, I don't know, like one thing I say a lot is based off of more like a sentence level. So there's different, what's the word I'm looking for? Like we call them higher order concerns and lower order concerns, which they're kind of self-explanatory. Like higher order concerns are more like overall broad view of what the themes are in your essay, what ideas you're conveying. That's what we more try to get at when we help people is like how are you going to go about writing this paper? If the paper's already written, thinking about how your theme goes together throughout the paper, and um, I guess like connecting ideas to one another. So in terms of that, the advice I would give, just like as like an overview instead of like specific, um, is like thinking about how you structure your essay, um, which is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially like early on in the writing process, is they like just don't know how to start. And once they get going, they are able to communicate what they want to. But sometimes like getting the ideas in the right order and saying what they want to say in the best possible like organization method. Um, that's probably the biggest piece of advice. Just um, like before the writing process starts, learning how to like sort your ideas out. Definitely like a lot of people don't, or I mean, brainstorming is one thing that people, there's lots of different tactics that people use for that. But it's almost more like finding what works best for you. Um, and a lot of times it's almost hearing what the person says to you. You kind of get an idea of like, this kind of thing would help them more based off of how they communicate and how they're talking to me now. Um, there's lots of different strategies you can use for that, but um, so I'd say like learning how to like lay out your ideas at the beginning is one of the big things I work on with people, and also we also get a lot of people who come in having already written it and wanting help like seeing if what they've written is quality work and if they feel like it's good to go or not. Um, and at that point, normally the big thing is like run-on sentences are definitely like one of the biggest things. That's something I always struggle with
Yeah,
too
I'm
in
the
my
king of
writing.
run-on sentences, so
Yeah. Um, and I've learned a lot about how to fix that in your writing, um, because writing is different than communicating with a person like we're talking
mhm.
now, because um, you don't get the facial expressions and all of that other stuff. Because a lot of people write how they would talk out loud, and it's not that that's like bad or not how you would want to communicate, but um, when you don't get all those other cues, other factors and things, um, sometimes the ideas don't come across through the writing. And that's what's really great about going to see someone to help with your writing is they have a completely fresh, they haven't heard it, um, they have a fresh outlook. And so it's almost like you could do that with almost anyone, like just bounce it off of someone like, hey, like, would you read this for me? Does anything like make sense? Is it like confusing at all? And a lot of times just giving that feedback to someone helps the writing itself, and it's not even just like it's almost not even giving advice. It's more like this part was a little bit confusing. I think you're trying to say this. Is that what you were trying to say? And then they're able to figure out what they want to say. So
Yeah, because I love writing personally. I don't
mm-hmm.
know what it is, just like putting on some chill music in the background. Like I love putting on video game music and then just like cranking out like a 5-page paper or something.
Mm.
But I definitely find myself, and I've gotten this comment a lot, like anybody who has heard me talk, I write verbatim to how I talk. And so it's funny because I'll be reading it like out loud, or I'll be reading it's like, yeah, this sounds great. This sounds perfect. And it's because it's exactly how I would speak it if I wrote it. So of course it sounds great. But just somebody reading it, they're like, this is probably 5 sentences in one in one sentence. So you definitely need to work. You definitely need to work on that. Do you pay for like would I have to pay to get some help from the Media and Writing Center, or like how does that work?
Yeah, so it's completely free to students, and yeah. So you like it's a part of the well. We used to be our own group, our own like service, but this semester we're merging with the Academic Success Center, so we're in the same department with actual tutoring. There's all sorts of programs like supplemental instruction, SI. There's academic coaching. All of those are under the same umbrella now, and just like those services, it's a free service. You just go on our website and like sign up for an appointment, and it's the website's a little confusing to navigate, but once you like you have to like make an account and stuff like that. Um, but once you do that, you're in the system, and yeah, so there's no charge, which is another like really good.
That's what I was saying when we walked in here. It's like ISU is home to a million things that are completely free,
Mm-hmm.
really fleshed out that just people don't know about. Like I took a tour of Warburg's campus with one of my buddies, and he gave me like the full rundown of the campus, and it took him 3 hours to walk me everything, every classroom, everything. And I was like, these things probably exist at ISU, but it would take me 10 hours to do this same tour
Uh-huh.
because they're all so spread apart. And it's to a point where like you just have to know somebody who does it. Like you would not know that this podcast room exists unless you knew somebody who had a podcast and you're like, hey, where do you do that? Because
Yeah.
this thing is just like in the basement of one of the buildings. And stuff like that exists throughout campus, and it's so cool. Like, especially when like that guy who came in and helped set up the podcast. He just works here. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if he probably gets paid, but he's probably an ISU student, just faculty that works here. And it's the same with you. You know what I mean? You have a bunch of stuff that are here that are just designed to help you, and people that are designed to work here, but they just do it. And ISU has so much opportunity like that.
Yeah.
And the Media and Writing Center is so cool. I'd imagine that it's pretty fulfilling too. Do you have statistics on like how much you guys influence people's grades or like anything like that? Do you get a lot of like A's back? Like, do people come and talk to you like, thank you, you helped me? Like, do you get any stuff like that or?
Yeah, we get so in terms of like the student employees like myself that work there, we don't get like the grade back from the person that came in, um, but I know they collect data on that stuff, like my boss and the other like full time faculty, and they always tell us at our meetings that like students who come in get a higher grade on their papers, get higher grades overall. Um, and I think that's a reflection of almost more of the effort that gets put in, which is awesome. Like that's what academics should be, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion.
It's just
Um,
yeah, because if they're willing to come into the room to show you the paper,
mhm.
they're probably gonna get a good grade anyway. Like if they're the type of person that cares enough to let someone else read it, they're probably gonna get a pretty good grade,
Yeah,
regardless. But I can't
for sure.
imagine that you guys hurt anybody's. Imagine if imagine if you guys tanked a bunch of papers
Yeah,
that people send up to you guys, and you guys just are horrible and then purposely tank people you don't like.
yeah. I try not to. I try not to.
That'd be a lot of power. So you covered a lot of things. We might come back to the media and writing center, but I want to talk about Kairos for a little bit. So, how many people go to that church? Like, what kind of turnout do you guys get?
Yeah. We so depending on the week, this semester we this semester we split into two services. So we normally like in years past we've normally just had one every Wednesday night, but we had just a really high turnout to begin the semester this fall. So I'm trying to remember the official number, but we do like a kickoff event that's on Central Campus. So our first Kairos service every fall is just right underneath the Campanile, which is always really cool. And I think we got just people who like showed up at least for part of it. I think we got like 900 or so, and then that's always a number that we're not going to hit the rest of the year. But
Yeah, but still.
yeah. So, and then once we kind of get into the semester, we have a solid, like, this year we've had like about 400 to 500, I think, depending on the week. And yeah, so
Those are
that's,
really, I mean, those are really good numbers. I guess I don't know, growing up in Madrid, I don't know what like a big church is like, but
mhm.
I mean, beyond that, I mean, you have other numbers because I know Salt gets like a crazy number of people, but why, like, why Kairos? I mean, comparatively to all the other churches, you know what I mean? Like, why would
Mhm.
somebody and why should somebody go to like Kairos instead of like, I don't know what you guys compare yourselves to, but why would somebody go to Kairos instead of another church on campus?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say the biggest thing is just like denominational differences. Um, we always, as kind of a Kairos leadership team, we always talk about that, like what what we should tell people about, like who are we as Kairos as a group, um, and we really try our best to be like not fitting into a particular denomination, particularly because like college is just you get this mix of students who come from different backgrounds, different experiences, um, and so everyone's coming into it with a different background on what like faith means to them and what those things were like growing up. So I think the thing, it's not that other groups don't do that as well, but the thing that we try to do is we try to stick away from like talking about like the details and like talking about like what you should believe, what you shouldn't believe. We try to stick more to like the key overarching theme of just like what Christianity is. It's a grace-based ministry. Grace meaning that like it's like God um, does the work for us. Like God works through us, and there's nothing that we as people can do to earn God's love. God just loves people. That's just like
What
an
would be
inherent
an
thing.
alternative for that? Like, what places aren't grace based?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of that's a great question.
Yeah.
That's where you start getting like um, there's groups that will say that there's like um, you start getting into like the theology behind it. Um, that is kind of the key. I mean, that's the key to Christianity itself. Um, certain groups will start to say um, like you gotta believe this exactly, or like um, you have to do this exactly to be a Christian, or like this is what it means to be a Christian, um, and that's where like that's what honestly is like that's what makes me sad about like when people like misrepresent it, is like it's definitely not it's a very inclusive thing. A lot of times people try to make it this thing where it's like if you don't follow this to a T, you can't be Christian. Like that's almost the opposite of what it actually is.
Hmm.
Um, it's the idea that like we all make mistakes and do things like like make mistakes, do things wrong occasionally. But we're all united in that. We're like none of us is like perfect. There's no like limitation to who can be accepted and be a part of the faith journey. Um, yeah. So there's definitely not, and there's not like a group on campus that does that. There's not like, yeah, it's kind of more of a,
You guys really really go in on that,
yeah,
which I think is such an important thing, especially on a college campus. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of kids who, the goal should be like, yes, you're going to make mistakes in this part, especially in this part of your life, and it's like to know that you're still loved, and to know, and but to still know that you have to strive towards the best. But as long as you're striving, like that's all good and you're accepted there. I think that's super important for a church, especially on a college campus, to be doing. A
yeah.
church in general, obviously, but beyond that, to really vouch for that, I think that's super important on a college campus. Do you think that's why you guys get like a good turnout? Is that kind of present in the lectures or in the sermons and the speeches? Like, is that kind of present or?
Yeah, that's definitely what we really try to push. And Kairos, it just started as a ministry in 2017, I believe. So it's relatively new, and it was definitely really small when it began. So it's definitely been growing a lot in the last couple of years, and I'd say that's the big thing. Um, is it's like people who I've talked to this year, especially like freshmen coming into college for the first time, is a lot of them don't have a Lutheran background, and they were originally hesitant to come to Kairos because of that affiliation, but through whatever reasons they ended up coming for a service, I normally just hear things that like they didn't feel like the like specific theologies behind like being Lutheran versus being another denomination. They felt like those weren't really being like pushed on them, and it was more about like the core beliefs that we share. And so I really like that. That was one of the reasons why I stuck with it when I first came, and it really came across to me. It was like it felt like they were talking about things that were really important to me at the time, and like really applicable like as a college student. That's another thing we try to do is um, like talk about things that are important and like are about are going to help us in our lives and living out our lives in our faith.
Do you have any examples?
Yeah. Well, so to begin the year, we kind of had like at our kickoff service, that was kind of a standalone service. But then we normally go into like a sermon series where for a couple of weeks, we'll dive into a certain like topic, a theme that will relate back to itself over the course of like a month or so. And the first one we did this fall was, I think it was called Taking Care in College, and it was all about just like how to take care of yourself, how to like live out your life as a college student, and then like tie in biblical themes. Like this is like good ways to stay healthy physically. So we had like one service was about like physical health, one service was about mental health, one service was about spiritual health, and like so each week we like talked about a different aspect of that. And I just think that's really important because especially some of those topics don't get covered a lot, or like you don't like associate them with like Christianity, and they are really important. Like they're things that God cares about and that like we should care about too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it seems like when you go to a church and they're talking about specifically like they're doing lectures on the Bible and they're doing sermons on the Bible and they're taking it directly and then applying it themselves, like that's really good. But to just have a sermon kind of without that initial interpretation, just like this is present day, what you guys need to know and what like our interpretation of the Bible is going to tell you or our interpretation of the religion is going to tell you, and to kind of take those steps out of it to make it more approachable for college students. I think that's awesome. And I've heard a lot about Pastor Danny from Luke, who loves him. Is he young? Is he still like, tell me about Pastor Danny? Because to me, he sounds like a legend. So,
Yeah, I love Pastor Danny. Yeah, he's relatively young. He graduated seminary within the last like 5 to 10 years. I forget exactly, but so he's like a young adult in the Ames community. He's the pastor at the Lutheran Church of Hope in Ames. And yeah, he does a lot of running, so I've actually gone on runs with him.
that's so cool.
Yeah, gotten to know him a little bit through that. And yeah, he cares a lot about Kairos and spends a lot of time. I know just through conversations I've had with him, like really like thinking and praying about what he talks about in messages, finding ways to not just like finding ways to include other people in that. So he doesn't always give the messages. Sometimes he brings in other people. Like for example, when we were talking about mental health earlier this semester, he gave the message that week, but he brought in his name's Kip Van Dyke. He works at the I forget what his official title is, but
I feel like I've heard that name before.
okay, yeah, he works here at Iowa State. He's an Iowa State faculty member. He kind of oversees a lot of the student organizations and like it's kind of hard to describe what his job is, but he has a background in counseling. I know he like went to school for like mental health related area, and he came to speak and at that during like for a portion of that message. And what I really liked about that was like we were connecting Iowa State students with an Iowa State faculty member instead of just trying to say like, obviously there's a spiritual component to that and that underlies everything that we do. But for someone who, it might be like new to faith or like still like thinking about what it means to them or, what they believe in, there was an Iowa State faculty member there who they heard from and could like go to if they needed something so that they didn't feel like there was pressure to like, oh, I got to go to this person in the church to talk about this topic. Like, here's someone at the university who has experience in it, who went to school for it, and like is a connection I can go to that's not from like
that isn't like necessarily religious.
Yeah.
See, that's really cool because I think a lot of churches want to stay, specifically condensed into those people and kind of propagate throughout that. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, it seems like they're doing something right. I mean, I guess if I were to ask somebody about Kairos, and what would they say if I were to just be like, hey, have you heard of Kairos? Like, what is that bad thing that they say? Like, do you think there's anything bad that people would say about it? Have you guys had any experiences?
I don't know. The feeling I get from just like the feeling on campus about it is, obviously SALT is like the big group, big college ministry here at Ames, and I really like SALT. I went to a couple SALT services my freshman year, and I really like how they're really good at connecting people and like growing that and inviting friends and stuff like that. And so obviously, SALT's kind of the big ministry on campus. The feeling I get around Kairos is like it's kind of a smaller alternative if you're not looking for like a big experience like SALT or
because SALT has like thousands of people, don't they?
Yeah, and they continue to like they send new church plants to other like big universities around the country and stuff. So they have places, they have
other
SALT companies
yeah,
at
okay,
colleges and stuff. So Kairos is kind of like a smaller alternative, less like there might be differences in what the two ministries believe down to the details, but it's kind of an alternative in that way, but it's also just kind of a smaller community. That was something I liked about it was coming from a small town. It was much more what I was used to. It was still bigger than I was used to, but like it had the smaller feel that I was familiar with. So definitely like smaller, but um, also like we try to be like keep it relevant to college students, and obviously other ministries are doing that too. But um, I don't know. Um, I mean, thankfully, I haven't really heard anything bad about Kairos. Um, I know there's always like people who come and it might not be the right fit for them, and so we always try to say like it's not like you never should feel like you have to come to this place. Like if there's a place that's a better fit for you for what you believe in, and that works better also in your schedule because people are just so busy. And
Mm-hmm.
Salt meets Thursday nights, Kairos meets Wednesday nights, so um, sometimes it's a schedule thing that it works better for people. So yeah, but
And were you particularly religious before college and before Kairos, or is this something that Kairos helped like inspire in you, or is this something that you kind of always had and you were going to find an avenue no matter what?
yeah. So I grew up going to church. I would say that faith has always been a part of my life. My parents were a big part of that and a big reason why. Um, and definitely the college experience, for many people, is a time where I um, kind of learned, almost more took the initiative myself on it, and kind of learned more about what it meant to me as now an independent person outside of growing up at home and stuff. Um, and it happened to coincide with like a church switch because I had a really great church experience growing up. We went to a church in Ankeny. I used to live in Ankeny before I moved to Madrid, and then went to a smaller local church in Madrid when I was in high school. That was really awesome. I had such a great experience there. I would say that was like the time in my life where that started to pick up for me, my faith journey and stuff. Um, and then obviously then the college switch um, changed things too, and I kind of heard about Kairos through Lutheran Church of Hope is a very large church network organization too because their main campus is in West Des Moines, and then they have like 5 or 6 other locations, with Ames being one of them. Um, and when I came to college, it was right in the middle of the pandemic, being at kind of the heat of that all, and um, a lot of churches went online, and my family decided to watch one of the Lutheran Church of Hope services online during that, and that was right about when I was leaving for college. And so that's where I heard about Kairos, was through that, and we kind of made that church switch during that time. And then um, I started going to Salt when I first came here, but um, finally decided to try Kairos through like the connections I had back with watching those services, and that was like the spring of my freshman year, and that it felt like it was the right fit from the beginning for me. So
Okay, so it was kind of something that, I mean, you've been religious your whole life. How has that impacted your life? Like, what do you use that for? Like, how does it help you, like, as a human, just every day?
yeah, um, well yeah. So I'd say the biggest thing is just like knowing who you are, and like how to treat other people um, is a big thing. Obviously, like for those who might not be familiar, or for those who are, um, like Christianity is the belief um, that Jesus was the Son of God, and that He died on the cross to like save people from their sins. That's kind of the core belief, and so there's the component of like believing that Jesus was God, and like receiving that love, that like God loved the world so much that He sent His Son, and would do that for um, each and every person who's alive. Um, so there's that belief, which helps you live out your life because um, you know that you know God, the person who reigns over it all, who like created the world and um, loves the world. He's not out to like ruin on your life. Like God loves you, and it really changes the way you look at things because you also know that then other people who are also going through their life struggles like normal, like we all do, that God loves them just as much, and that love is like infinite, like it does not end. Um, Helps you know that like no matter what differences you have with another person, that you can always like show love for them, show respect for them, help them with whatever you have been equipped to help them with. I'd say that's the biggest thing.
And so is that something that you bring with you like every day? Like is that something that you're constantly thinking about and trying to express because of just like the values that the religion taught you? Like do you find yourself thinking about that, acting that way and doing that just naturally from that?
Yeah, that's the goal. That's what I always try to do in the interactions when I have with people. Um, there's obviously another component that like you're never going to do it perfectly. You can't help every single person at the same time. But I think one of the things that I try to think about is like um, if you know that you can't do it perfectly, but you just have to give your best effort and do your best. Um, that is also something like um, sometimes you can take that fact that like that God loves you, and then but like God also has like a hope for you of like how He wants you to live out your life, and I think a lot of people sometimes take that and are like feel like they can't do enough and aren't able to like help enough. Um, and that's something I struggle with too sometimes. But the ultimate key is knowing that um, like you giving your best effort is all that is like asked of you, and like desired of you. And at the end of the day, you're never gonna do it perfectly, and that's not gonna like change how God feels about you either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was, do you know who Jordan Peterson is? Have you heard of
Yeah,
him?
I've heard of that name.
Yeah, he's a psychologist, very famous psychologist, a lot more political now than he was before he became famous. But I mean, beyond that, if you listen to some of his stuff before he became political, um, he did a lot of lectures on religion, and he would go through every single story in the Bible and talk about it for like 2 hours and just go nuts. And he'd talk about it. And I think one of my favorite lessons um, that my I don't know if this is exactly how he interpreted it, but this is how my brother interpreted it to me, and he was like, um, basically what the Bible is even if you don't believe that Jesus was ever a person, even if you don't believe in God, even if you don't believe in any of the stories in the Bible, like the point of it is to like heaven is and God are the best version of you, like the version that you want to become, and you just need to strive for your whole life to go towards being that person. And it's like, even if you don't believe those things, it's like the Bible is designed to motivate you to be the best person that you can be. And that, like, God is perfection. And you know that you can never be perfect. But to constantly strive and to please Him, but not really, it's to please yourself. It's to be the best person that you can be, because that's what's going to create the best person, is the person that's constantly trying to do better. And so you mentioned that like nobody's going to be perfect, but like you should try. Like that shouldn't stop you. And that's what I'm saying. Like, or that's what I've been trying to think about is like, even though you can't be perfect, it's like, what else am I going to do than try? And that's why I think that like there are a lot of people who kind of give up on that idea. A lot of people who it's much easier. They fall into this thing where it's like difficult to try to be the best. It's difficult to try to work towards yourself and be the best person that you can be. But I mean, what's the alternative? You give up, you don't try, and that's when a lot of like the blaming starts. That's when a lot of like, because if you want to fix something, if you want something to be better, you have to do it yourself, because I can't make you do anything. And that's where a lot of people just find that it's easier to be like, oh well, it's Rory's fault that I'm this way. So, well, and now they don't have to do that anymore. And I think that's something that we're losing, and that's why I really appreciate like the values. Like even though I don't go to church, like I really appreciate the values that they push because it's a really easy and good way to teach kids how to have those values, and then beyond that, it's kind of what's widely accepted, especially like in the U.S. just as the idea of what you should be, and I think that's because it works. I mean, it's so popular it's because it's just a good idea. And so I really like to hear that there's a group on campus that's conveying those messages, but in a really like collegiate way, like in a way that people can actually relate to, like in a way that they understand. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I know you're not the pastor there, but I
Yeah.
think it's cool. I mean, just hearing you talk about it, it's inspiring. You know what I mean? It's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted you on here because it's just I knew that people would hear it and be like, I feel better after hearing that, and I think that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At the
Oh yeah.
very least, if there's nothing to take away from it, if you can't take something out of it, that's what you could take. It's like I feel better after being there. Do you get that feeling, like
Yeah.
at the church that people walk out there just feeling better?
Yeah. That's that is kind of the goal of like a service is like we want people to feel loved and be able to like leave every week knowing that like um, that was they had an opportunity to like feel that love being poured into them. It's not about what I can do to make it better. It's about like I just have to be there and be present, and I know that like the people there are gonna love me, are gonna fill me up, are gonna encourage me, because the unique thing about church is that it's not like the people who go to church have any different circumstances than the people who don't go to church. Like we all have struggles in life and like things come up that you're not expecting, and I think that's like what's the purpose of church and like of being in a community like that is that like you're there to support one another, and you're not trying to tear people down, but you're trying to love them and show them that you care about them. So
Yeah, I think that's really the biggest thing is it's a social network, and it's such a big, widely accepted social network, and it's like even though most people have views and values that align with the church, regardless of whether or not they go, they just do. But to walk in a room and know that theoretically every person there has the same good values of you, I mean, that's a good community. That's
yeah,
a good community of people. And I think that's definitely the most important, especially in a small town like Madrid. You have a bunch of kids who are in the church and they grow up in the church together. And it's like, being that close and watching them that closely and growing with them through that church is a really good community thing, you know. And I like to say all these things, saying that it's unrelated to the religion because that's the thing. It's you have people who disagree with the religion or who might not agree, and that's completely okay. But you have to be able to see the good things in it, unrelated to the religion. Even if you think the religion is ridiculous, like you have to see that there are really good things about it, like about the collecting group of people. And I think that a lot of people are losing that. Like they're applying what they believe to the religion, and it kind of silences them from the things that you could take from it. I think that there are really good things to take from it.
yeah,
And I know Luke specifically, like he came in there struggling, like just to figure out what he's doing. And every time he came back from that, he was just a better person every single time. And it's like, it doesn't matter what they said in there. Like him coming out smiling and having his head just a tiny bit clearer, like that is good. That is justice. And
yeah,
it's like, that's great. That's why I love, that's why I think it's really awesome to have something like that on campus for sure. So, I
yeah.
mean, yeah, and then the Media and Writing Center, you can give them that same kind of love, no matter how crappy their essay is.
Oh yeah, it all ties in.
Yeah, it all ties together. So the next thing I want to talk about is the Run Club, and so more specifically, you said that you really try to promote health consciousness. Um, so first off, as a blanket statement for all the people that you would consider health unconscious, what is like the easiest way to take that step to like become health conscious? You have people who are like, I don't know how, I don't want to, I think it's stupid. Like, what do you say to those people?
Yeah.
Like,
Um, yeah. I think you're good. I think the biggest thing I I guess think about or would tell someone is um, just how important it is to your overall health. Um, like we were just talking about like religion and beliefs and like kind of more spiritual health, which is a component, and then there's like mental health and our thinking and how that helps us live out our lives, and then there's our physical health, and um, that includes what we eat, what our nutrition and like what we put into our body. It includes like exercise, um, and how those tie together. Um, and if there's one area of your health that is struggling or that you're not quite like getting enough support in, then it's going to affect the other areas of your health. Um, so for someone who's like might be like thinking like, why do I need to exercise or why do I need to like eat healthy or um, doesn't know how to go about that. Um, I mean, the first thing is like, um, recognizing that it does affect the other areas of your life. Um, and the easiest example I can put to that is like I have I've been running for a long time now, and I'm at the point where I can tell if I go for a run, I feel better overall for the rest of the day than if I don't go for a run. And you might think, oh, that might be attributed to like the habit that I've built up, and if I don't get to do that, then that might be the reason why. But there's tons of scientific evidence that shows that like exercise, no matter what that looks like for a person, um, exercise has so many benefits for your overall health that it's like kind of mind-boggling that like um, you know in health people like to turn to like medicine to try to like um, cure their illness or disease or like help it, but exercise is one of the like only proven natural ways that your body like will heal itself by just doing it. um, and to encourage anyone who's like not sure how to take the first step is like just getting started is like the best thing I could say. Like um, it's easy to look at people who have like tons of experience in exercise, who are fit and in shape now, and say like, how am I ever going to get to that point? But it's like you don't start at that point. Like that's the end point or like the point that you get to where you're in your best shape. But it's about finding like what's like what are you ready for today, and it's always you always are pushing yourself like to a point that you weren't at the day before, but um, you don't have to like start out running hundreds of miles of all the time. Um, like going out for walks and like you know going out for 10 minutes on a short walk if you're someone who like hasn't exercised in a really long time, like those small steps are what get you to the end goal. So um, yeah, it's all about finding out where you're at now and like just building step by step each day instead of like you're not going to get there by like doing a really hard week of intense exercise. Like that's not going to get you there. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and I'd say another big thing is like to start right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're listening to this podcast right now, stop and just go. Like go and do something. Like stand up for 10 minutes. And if you haven't exercised in a while, just standing up and being standing is going to feel like horrible. You know what I mean? Like if you're in the dorms, just like walk downstairs and then walk back up them. You know what I mean? Like get some breath going, because that's the biggest thing where it's like, oh, well, it's 7:30. I might as well wait till tomorrow. And it's like, well, that's what you've been doing for like your whole life. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like, do it now. Like start now. Okay. And I think another thing, and I was going to mention it, but you kind of touched on it, where it's like prescribing medicine for people who feel bad or like have some sort of mental illness. And I'm not saying that the medicine is not the solution. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, we're both psychology majors. We understand, but I think the biggest thing is it's like if you wake up and you pound coffee and then you like smoke some weed and then you like sit down and eat junk food all day and then you're depressed and I'm not saying that's causing your depression, But before anybody should prescribe you medicine, there are steps that you should do beforehand that might help you feel better. And not specifically with depression, but any feeling of just feeling bad, like feeling unhealthy. Like there are things that you should do, and I really think exercise is the best way and the most common way to just kind of overcome that like grogginess, like get you energized, like to make you feel just better in general in any facet is just consistent exercise. And then I think water is the next big one
Yeah.
because a lot of people, you know, they're eating chips and those are just really salty. And then a lot of people when they're thirsty, they train themselves to drink soda or like Red Bull or something. And it's like I'm not saying don't drink Red Bull, but I am saying drink at least as much water as you do Red Bull. And like tell me how you feel because Jenna was telling me that she goes some days where she doesn't drink any water, like not even like a drop. And it's like, and she'll say that she has a headache, and it's like I could not imagine why that you might have a headache right now. Like water hasn't even touched your lips today, and so those are like the two things that I'd recommend. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
That just like I'm not saying it's gonna make you feel the best, but I am saying it will make you feel better. And not saying it'll make you feel all the way better, but just it's stuff like that. You know what I mean? And that's why when I read on your sheet that you care about health conscious, which I knew about you, but beyond that, like that you mentioned it, I thought that's really you're kind of collecting them all. By the way, with psychology, spiritual and physical, you're kind of collecting all of the healths there. So
Yeah.
congratulations on that. But yeah, I
Thank
mean,
you.
yeah, would you agree with that? Just, is there anything that you want to touch up on that?
Definitely, yeah. I would say water is the most underrated source
It's my favorite
of health.
drink.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's kind of easy for me to say. I just don't drink, much beyond water, um, and so like, I am obviously like familiar with that or like building that habit up. But yes, like water is just a key part of how your body functions. Um, and you get that source from you get a little bit of water from your food, you get a little bit of water from things that you consume, but water itself, like um, it just like exercise, you just notice you feel better, and there's like scientific data that backs up like that it helps your body, like your body needs it to function. Um, so yeah, I
I
agree.
mean, what would you suggest the bare minimum for weekly exercise would be? Like someone who doesn't do any exercise, where should they want to be exercise wise?
Yeah. Um, I would say consistency is probably the biggest thing. So like if you're like looking to get into it or like wondering how to, um, starting small, like as small as it needs to be that you can do it like a couple of times a week. So like sometimes every other day is too much. So like, if you can get out twice a week for those first couple of weeks, and just go for a short walk, like um, once you can build it up to the habit where it's like um, every other day or a couple of times a week, that's when you know that you're getting the consistent benefits from it. Um, and then it starts to become a habit when you can do it every other day, or I mean, even every day. But lives get busy, and that isn't always possible. So, I would say the minimum that you can do, where it's at the point where you can do it every other day or a couple times a week, um, is when you know that like you're getting into the cycle, like you're building that up and that habit up. So.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's a good plan. It's like a good game plan because a lot of people, they'll be like, oh, I skipped a day, and then they just won't do it. And so it's like, you kind of got to set the standards low. And I mean, that's not even that low. Like doing it twice a week is a good goal.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? But if you were expecting to do it 5 times a week and you only did it twice, like that's not something to shy away from. That's good progress.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, what would you say specifically for running? So, like, if someone wanted to get into running, where do they start? What things should they be aware of? Like, what should they know? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, well, I would say a similar thing. Don't expect to start running and run every day, and that like your body's going to handle that well. Because yeah, it's definitely if I like go through a training cycle and then I've always obviously have been running for a long time. It's good to take some time away from it and let your body recover. And when I get back into it, I'm not, or you can't expect yourself to go every day like do the amount of miles that you were doing when you began. So I would say, um, yeah, you shoot for like 2 or 3 days a week to begin with. Um, any amount of distance. Um, if you are completely new to running, um, I would shoot more for like time goals than distance goals because sometimes the distance might seem more daunting than the time. So it's like you don't have to be as focused on like how fast you're going. So like if you're new to it, like just like shoot for a couple of minutes or like get to the point where it's like okay, I can run for 5 minutes a couple times a week, and then once that's getting comfortable, then you build up to 10, and then like sometimes helping starting with the time over the distance makes it less you're less focused on how far you go and more focused on like the amount of time um, and then that starts to help you like see where you're at. I know I feel like I've been saying that a couple times now, but um, it takes a lot of like self-assessment, like just getting a sense of like what you can handle, because like I mentioned, every person is coming from a different situation, a different background in exercise. So um, yeah, you gotta like um, it takes an amount of like being reasonable with yourself, setting goals for yourself that short-term goals, it's like, okay, I'm going to run 2 or 3 times this week. Another short-term goal is like, I want to be able to run like 15 minutes without stopping. Um, and then more long-term goals, like if you're like, oh, I want to enter into a 5K or something like that. Um, giving yourself like a couple months and being able to like build up to that is another great way to start chipping away at like a long-term goal, I guess. So.
That's really awesome advice with the time thing. Like
Mm.
that's a good idea. I found myself doing that because you mentioned that like once you take a break and then you come back, like you have to be ready to have a pretty sizable drop off.
Mm-hmm.
And some days you'll be able to kill like a 10-minute run. And then some days a 10-minute run is just unbearable.
Yeah.
And cuz I did cross country in high school, as you know, and then I wanted to gain some weight, and so I stopped running because I knew that I'd lose my weight if I kept running.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped running. Um, and then once I gained weight and I was comfortable with the weight I gained, I wanted to cut some of it. So I started running again.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, was that like it felt like I had never ran before. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And like to kind of swallow that pride and be like, okay, we're running for 10 minutes today. And like because my shin splints couldn't handle it, like I was gassed out. Like it was an insane thing. And then to train up to run cuz I ran a half marathon um like a month ago.
Nice.
And then after that, I didn't run for a month because I just could not run anymore.
Uh-huh.
Because like every time I started, like my legs just gave out, and I was like, nah, I can't, I'm not doing it.
Uh-huh.
And cross country meet in high school would have been running 2 weeks later. You know what I mean? And so
Mm-hmm.
like just the difference, like the drop off that you have from doing that is super good advice and because you were a good runner in high school, and I imagine you still are now. And so to get that from you is it's good. It's good advice. I think that that'll help a lot of people who are starting to get into it because I think running is super awesome. Um, it's a lot of time like in your head. You know what I mean? Just like to think, to like listen to music or a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
or just to do something productive. You could listen to an audiobook while you run, and it's kind of the same with working out. But there's something special about running, and it's kind of one of those things you can only do, not only, but you should really do when you're younger. Because once you get older, it starts to kind of hurt your knees and like your
Yeah.
back, and you should probably do swimming or biking or something. But when you're young, this is the only time you can take advantage of that. And when you're going to be in your mid 30s and you're looking to get into something weird or something different, and you're going to try to do running, you're like, dang, I wish I did running when I was in college or high school. So I mean, I don't know. I'm a fan of running for sure. I think I really like it.
Nice.
And I really like cross country too. What does um a running club meet look like?
Yeah. So it's very similar to what if you're coming into this with like a background in running cross country in high school or any sort of like racing environment. So the difference between like cross country and just like if you've ever like watched a half marathon or like a road race, is cross country normally takes place on like grass or in like a park setting, versus road races are normally like on concrete, like in on the road, or on like a paved trail. Um, and so run club meets, um, they we have experienced a couple different like um, atmospheres, I guess. One of them, like I was talking about earlier, is other schools have their own running clubs sometimes. Normally bigger schools. So you think about like where Iowa State here, um, other big universities that the Iowa State athletic teams might play. Those types of schools would, or a lot of them also have running clubs. So, for example, our first meet this fall, it was hosted by the University of Wisconsin's run club, and so that their run club, University of Iowa has a run club. They came to that meet as well. University of Illinois, Northwestern had one that came. Michigan. So a lot of the like big Division I schools, they also have running clubs. And then the meet atmosphere is, um, you know, those clubs come to the same place and do a race on that day. Um, and everyone runs together, and then you score. You have a team score as a that is very similar to what like a high school or college meet would be like. Um, you get the score of the place that you get. So the person who gets first place would get 1 point. Second place would get 2 points, and then there's a total of 5 people that get the top 5 people on your team get a score based off of the place that you get, and the team with the lowest score is like the winner, because like first place has one
Yeah.
point. Um, so it's kind of a unique scoring system, and it's cool when obviously there's like it's fun to go out and like go for a race on your own and like try to beat a certain time that you're trying to get to. But it's also really cool to have the team environment and like um, you're all running as a group together. Because the idea is that you're like people are at different paces, so you might not be running with someone on your team right next to you, but you're all trying to do your best, and then trying to figure out like what you all can do collectively as a team. Um, if you can all like run your best on the same day, that's the ideal. Like that's like the ultimate goal, and it's really rewarding when you can do that, and also when you get the chance to train with those people and like,
And to see them succeed
yeah,
and to succeed with them too. I mean, it's kind of like just working as a group to help motivate each other and because I think that's really cool to try to to kind of replicate the cross country setting, but without like the direct competitiveness of the cross country setting where everyone knows that this is like a club.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I think it's cool. I think it's
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah, because we have people who will sign up for the meet who don't run a whole lot, and they just like want to come and have some fun and like still want to race and do their best. Um, and that's what I really like about the running club is um, it does not matter like what background you have in it. It's completely as seriously as you want to take it and be competitive with it, and as not seriously and just like how much fun you want to have. Um, and both like you really get a wide range of people and experiences, and it's totally the whole training cycle like um, if you ran for a cross country team or a track team in college, it's very time consuming, and um, you know obviously like it's awesome, and I would encourage people to do it if they're interested in it. But it's the unique part about the running club experience is it's like you can do as much as you want to do or as little as you want to do, and make running what you want it to be. And it's not like an outside a coach or something like telling you what to do. It's completely like what you set your own pace and stuff. So
Yeah, and to have a more casual opportunity to do something that mimics cross country is, I mean, I'd do it if I wasn't a baby and could run as as good as I wanted to. But we're running up on a little bit past an hour, so we can definitely do a part two. I would love to. I say that with pretty much everything. But if there's any last plugging you want to do, like dates, times, emails, and everything, I encourage you to do it now. But yeah, if there is any plugging you want to do, any dates, times, things coming up with any of your groups, you can talk about it.
yeah. Yeah. So first of all, Kairos, like I mentioned, meets Wednesday nights. So we'll have a service next Wednesday. That will be, we'll have two services again. This past week, like last night, we only had one. We kind of did a unique thing this week. But so that will be Wednesday night, 7 or 9 p.m. And our location is 3329 Lincoln Way. It's a little building down Lincoln Way, kind of by the Papa John's, if you're familiar. Yeah, so 3329 Lincoln Way. It's kind of a mini building there with some parking next to it. So that's when we'll meet next, and you'll usually find us there Wednesday nights. And then running club, we meet. We have running times every day that meets at 4:15. Most of the time, like I don't go to most of those runs. Normally, I do it on my own time when it fits into my schedule. But if you're looking for a running community to run with people, they meet 4:15 p.m. Monday through Friday, and they meet outside of State Gym. So you'll see like a big group of people waiting out there, or in the winter, sometimes they'll wait inside since it's cold outside. So that's that. And if you're interested in like the meets and stuff like that, that'll be starting up again in the early winter with like indoor track meets. And then yeah, with the Riding Media Center, our hours are pretty much during regular like working hours during the week. So Monday through Friday, our location, we're in the Hickson Lead building, which is over by the Maple Willow Large dorms. It's kind of a building that a lot of people don't know about. So yeah, definitely look it up. It's called Hickson Lead. And we also, for the rest of the fall, we also have a location at Parks Library. And we also do have a lot of online options too. So when you go onto our website with the Writing Center, you can just look up Iowa State Writing and Media Center or Iowa State Academic Success Center, and you'll find links to like writing services. So we have a lot of different appointment options. Some in-person ones at Hickson Lead and the library. We also have online options where you like meet like face-to-face, like kind of like Zoom, but on its own like platform. And then there's also other services where it's like you're working on a document at the same time with a person, but you're not like seeing them or like talking to them.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool for people who like might be like shy or nervous about going into it, and you can just like talk to them on like the chat feature on a document. Yeah, so we have like lots of appointment times open for people. There's also some hours Sunday afternoons, but yeah, so definitely you'll like there's space and time for someone to try to fit into their schedule because schedules are busy and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
But,
yeah, that's awesome. I have to go in there to shut it off, but it was nice having this conversation with you, Rory. I thought this was very awesome. So
thank you so much for inviting me.
yeah, okay.